Have you ever had this huge dream you wanted to accomplish? Like when you said you wanted to write a book or start a company or land your dream role, or maybe even build a life that looks nothing like the one that you were quote unquote supposed to live. And then you shared that with someone and they pretty much gave you the side eye and told you, whoa, there, that sounds a little out there. And then instantly you felt deflated and convinced yourself to put that dream on the back burner. First of all, you need to cut that person out of your life right now because that energy has no business here. Second, I've got a little secret for you. You have to be a bit unhinged or delusional to achieve those outrageous dreams. And if you think about it, every big leap forward in history, actually a lot of things, started with someone being a little crazy or delulu. I'm going to explain to you why embracing an unreasonable belief in your dreams that defies all logic might be exactly what you need to reach them. Here's the game plan. Hang out with me, and in the next 20 or so minutes, I'll break down some of the big reasons that being a little delulu about your goals can propel you forward, backed by psychology and real examples, because we're here for more than just vibes, obviously. I'll show you the receipts by looking at famous people, entrepreneurs, creators, visionaries, who were once called crazy or unrealistic, but proved everyone wrong. And I'll share some practical steps for cultivating this mindset without losing touch with reality so that you can apply it into your own ambitions starting today. Cue the music. Hey there, I'm Melody Bose, your host of Jeans with the Blazer, a podcast about rewriting the rules of work and life. All right, Mel, what the heck are you talking about? So you might have heard the phrase, fake it till you make it, but honestly, that term grosses me out, it's boring, and it belongs right here in the jargon jar. So this is the upgraded version of that. And if you're wondering what the difference is, here it is. Fake it till you make it is rooted in insecurity, aka I don't have this yet, so I need to trick people into thinking I do. It's giving used car salesman. Gross. The other, being delulu, is rooted in vision. It's I see something for myself so clearly that I'm willing to hold on to it because it already exists. It's just not in my field of vision yet. This means you already have it. If you don't believe me, my boy Michelangelo said this very thing about sculpting works of art. He said, the sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It's already there. I just have to chisel away at the superfluous material. He had that gravitas and that vision that made him one of the greatest artists of the Renaissance and arguably everyone's favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, not up for discussion. I digress. Okay. This delulu, this delusional mentality has always been with us, except when we were little, it went by the name of imagination. Have you ever listened to a 5-year-old try and tell you a story? They're like tiny drunk anarchists. Okay, they could be talking about how their best friend / pet worm was hungry, so they pulled this heist at snack time to smuggle it crackers, and then snuck out of nap time to build the worm and his family subsidized housing out of juice boxes that they found in the trash. It is madness. Then you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, and they're like, a pterodactyl. I personally wanted to be a dolphin and or ginger spice, so to each their own. Anyway, as you go through life, you're met with a series of adversaries. Even if you're fortunate to have supportive parents, your big dreams can be met with criticism that comes from all sides. So teachers might tell you to color inside the lines and give you a series of rules to follow. Friends might shut down your ideas and say they're too much. Same with siblings. Basically, the world tells you to be more realistic so that you can fall in line with the beliefs and the structures they've created and are familiar to them. Now, being grounded in reality is super important. Yes, absolutely. You need to be able to connect with the world around you, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of your big ideas. And by losing that creativity, that imagination, the problem with that is being too unreasonable often leads to mediocre results. Boring. In my own life, whenever I've aimed for realistic goals, I have achieved very realistic outcomes. Maybe here and there, a gust of good luck might come my way, but generally, you're not leaving a whole lot of room for possibility there by just being average. So, reason number 1 why you want to be a little delusional about your dreams: unshakable self-belief. When you believe in yourself beyond all reason, you unlock this kind of psychological superpower. Research in psychology shows that self-confidence and self-efficacy, or the belief in your ability to succeed, are huge predictors of success. People with high self-belief set higher goals, persevere longer, and bounce back from setbacks more easily. Plain and simple. If you think you can do something, you're far more likely to actually do it. The maths, okay? So it can push you out of your comfort zone and make you attempt things that you might not normally dare. It also can help drown out that inner critic. Instead of, I can't possibly do this, that's crazy, your mindset becomes, of course it's going to work because I am that crazy. That shift is powerful. One example of this is Elon Musk with SpaceX. Now, I know he's quite a bit of a controversial figure at this moment, but let's look at this just siloed example. Stay with me. So Musk had what many called a delusional dream. He wanted to build reusable rockets and colonize Mars. Okay. Established rocket scientists literally laughed at him, and SpaceX's early years were riddled with failure. Their first 3 rocket launches all blew up or fell into the ocean. By 2008, after the third failure, SpaceX was on the brink of collapse. Basically, funds were nearly gone. A more reasonable person, and yes, I'm also not ignoring the wealth that he amassed to fund this. He got that wealth from PayPal, which he basically went bankrupt by himself to fund. That's a whole other story. But anyway, a reasonable person could have quit after those failures, saying, well, gave it our best shot, time to pull the plug. But Musk did not quit. He doubled down with an almost irrational belief that the next launch would work. And guess what? That 4th launch, it worked. In September 2008, the Falcon 1 rocket reached orbit, making SpaceX the first private company to launch a liquid fuel rocket into orbit. Granted, Musk wasn't the brains behind the actual rocket scientist. He had a very talented team of actual rocket scientists, engineers, and, all the people involved responsible for making that sort of thing happen. But SpaceX was his company that he was the leader of, and he persisted through catastrophic failures, multiple of them, investing his last dollars and refusing to give up on his crazy vision. His unwavering self-belief paid off when this 4th launch succeeded, again, at the brink of the company's near collapse. If he hadn't been so stubbornly confident, if he had been realistic, SpaceX may not have achieved all that it did. All right, let's bring it back down to earth. Let's look at some creators in this space that are maybe a little more accessible, maybe. Okay, you be the judge. MrBeast, or Jimmy Donaldson, started with almost no views, but told people early on that he would be the biggest YouTuber in the world. He was starting to speak this into existence. Friends thought he was delusional, spending 10 plus hours studying analytics and posting odd videos like counting to 100,000. And he had a few hundred videos that he made before one went viral. And he talks about how he would meet with his friends and he would critique the videos that he made with his friends, and they would give him feedback, and then he would implement that feedback. And fast forward to today, everything you see about him is pretty much against your will. He is exactly that. He is the biggest creator on YouTube. Now, Emma Chamberlain, she moved to LA with no connections and a quirky editing style that broke all the rules of YouTube. People doubted her success because it didn't fit the polished influencer mold. And now she's a global brand with her own coffee company and a fashion culture empire. So let's take a pause for a second, and I want you to think about your own goals. Have you ever accomplished something simply because you believed that you could, even when others and it felt like the world doubted you? That is the magic of self-belief. When you carry yourself, like, first of all, the queen you are, but second of all, like a person who will succeed, you will start to act like it. And those actions can lead to real success. I've talked about this in other podcast episodes, like the one about confidence and charisma and Marilyn Monroe. And in addition to that, there's some psychological phenomenon at play here. Optimism and positive expectations can become self-fulfilling. Some call it manifesting, but studies have found that optimists make more progress toward their goals, largely because they expect to succeed. A lot of it is in mindset, okay? They stay motivated and resilient. So, giving yourself permission to be a bit delulu, to say, I'm going to be the one who makes it, builds a mental resilience that keeps you going. Reason number 2. Unrealistic vision drives innovation and progress. The next reason to embrace a little delusion in your vision is that innovation literally depends on it. Okay, every or most major breakthrough or invention we now take for granted began as an unreasonable, unrealistic idea. To change the world, you often have to ignore the voice that says, be realistic. If you only ever did what seemed reasonable, you'd never push the boundaries or try something truly new. As the playwright George Bernard Shaw famously said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." I know I sound like a bit of a Pinterest board here, but I don't care. In fact, let's keep those historical vibes today because I'm feeling a little academic. Let's consider the Wright brothers. In the early 1900s, the very idea of human flight was considered ludicrous. Many experts believed it was physically impossible for a heavier than air machine to fly. Now, Orville and Wilbur Wright were like, okay, chat, challenge accepted. These two were seen as idealistic bicycle mechanics with delusions of grandeur. These guys spent years tinkering with gliders and designs, chasing what people called a mad dream. Then, on December 17th, 1903, on a windy beach at Kitty Hawk, they did it. They achieved the first powered-controlled airplane flight. The Wright Flyer flew a humble 120 feet, so not that far, but it flew 120 feet in 12 seconds on that first attempt. But what it did do is it proved that flight was possible. Could you just imagine for a second, like a little kid on those sand dunes just walking by or watching this contraption just like putter into the air despite everyone saying it could be done? It honestly took guts and a vision verging on delusion for that to pay off. And they were like, "You're welcome, world," because that effort opened the door to the age of aviation. Sidebar, okay. I love flying, and one of my favorite things to do is to eat food on an airplane. I'm a child, I know. But I always laugh when people complain about airplane food because, like, I'm thinking just the fact that we're soaring, we're like just shooting hundreds of miles in this winged tube just across the planet. First of all, that is insanity. And I'm just like eating a little sandwich and sipping on a little Pinot Grigio like it's breakfast at Tiffany's. All right, think of other unrealistic innovations like Thomas Edison, who created the light bulb after thousands of failed attempts. Okay, first of all, what kind of psychopath keeps going after 10 or 100 failures, let alone more than 1,000? Well, some of the greatest minds of all time that happen to be a bit delulu, that's who. Henry Ford saw people cruising around on horse buggies and was like, nah, we need something a little more practical that doesn't require us to clean up after it poops. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., envisioning a world of racial equality that at the time in the 1960s seemed impossibly far away. He did it. He took steps. Sure, we've got a bit to go, but progress was made. In every case, it took a person with an unreasonable vision to change reality. They had to see a reality that didn't exist yet, essentially believing in a fantasy until they could make it true. So, the next time someone says your idea or your goal is unrealistic, take it as a sign that you might be onto something truly innovative. Sure, not every wild idea is going to pan out, but if you never allow a little delusional dreaming, you're always going to color inside the lines. And that's boring. All progress begins as unrealistic. Give yourself that permission to dream big, even unreasonably big, as long as you're willing to put in the work. And we're going to get to that in the tips. That bold vision can become your compass to navigate forward. All right, so we've done a lot of talking. Let's put this into action. How to harness your delulu mindset productively. By now, we've seen that bold, somewhat delusional belief can fuel confidence, innovation, and perseverance. So, how can you cultivate that mindset in a practical, healthy way? Here are some actionable tips to get you started. We want to envision wild success daily. We have to get in the habit and train our brain into normalizing the outrageous. So I want you to visualize your goals as if they're already happening. Spend a few minutes each day picturing yourself living that dream and really embodying what that feels like. Whether it's a startup that you want to boom, or standing on stage at a big creative showcase, or simply achieving the lifestyle that you aspire to. All right, this isn't fluff. It primes your brain to believe and act accordingly. Your thoughts become a blueprint for your actions, and the more vividly and confident that you picture your success, the more real and attainable it feels. This boosts your motivation to put in the work. So your brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and a reality. So the more that you trick yourself, the more that you trick yourself into believing that this reality is yours, the more that your brain acts accordingly. Next, we're going to flip the script on self-talk. Okay, I really want you to pay attention to your inner dialogue that you have on your everyday. So if you catch yourself thinking, this is impossible, or I'm not good enough, stop, pause, pump the brakes, stop and reframe it. We're going to replace that thought with a deliberately positive, even slightly exaggerated affirmation. For example, I'm absolutely capable of figuring this out, or why wouldn't I succeed at this? It might feel cheesy at first, but over time, these affirmations can crowd out the negative self-doubt. Okay, so there's this experiment that was done where subjects were given a problem right before they went to sleep, and it was like a riddle or some math thing or something. And so the brain's job is to solve problems, right? So this experiment, it was really cool. They found that when the individual, they read the problem or the riddle before they went to sleep, they went to sleep. And while they were sleeping, the brain figured it out for a good majority of the participants. It's a cool experiment. Look it up. But basically, your brain is designed to figure out how to get there. So literally, you can do this while you sleep. So with that mindset, you're essentially going to be your own hype person, even if it feels a little bit crazy. You are trading that inner critic for an inner coach. And this starts to slowly over time build that self-belief muscle. Next, we're going to set an unrealistic goal, and then we're going to pursue it. Wow, Mel, way easier said than done. Don't worry, I got you. Think of a goal that truly excites you, one that you might have labeled unrealistic before. Declare it. Speak it into existence, write it down, tell a supportive friend, whatever makes it concrete. Then we're going to break it into smaller steps and start taking action. So this looks different for whatever your goal might be. So the key is not to immediately scale it down out of fear. You want to give permission for yourself to strive for it and get really real about what that takes to get there. So if you want to triple your business revenue, aim for it and reverse engineer what it would take. Want to switch careers entirely, start plotting the path. Even if you don't hit the exact crazy target, you're starting to get yourself into the motion of what that change looks like, and you'll likely achieve far more than if you just aimed low. Remember, big goals drive bigger actions than small goals. And as one entrepreneurial mantra goes, shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. Oh, jargon jar. Hate it, but love it for just this one episode. Okay, next, embrace failure and learn from it. So if you're going to be delusionally optimistic, pair it with pragmatic action. That means when things don't go as hoped, and trust me, there will be bumps in the road, don't ignore it. Learn from it. I have another episode about overcoming failure. Boom, check that out. But I also want to be really, really clear here. Being delulu is not about denying reality or refusing to admit mistakes. It's about not letting fear or failure stop you. So treat each setback as data. Ask, what can I tweak or improve, rather than should I give up? Cultivate the view that every failure is just a step towards success. Think of crazy psychopath Thomas Edison's attitude. Okay, he famously said that he didn't fail 1,000 times at making a light bulb. He found 1,000 ways that didn't work. I want you to keep that energy. All right, next, surround yourself with big thinkers. All of this conversation has been basically around mindset, but it can be contagious whether you hang around the right people or the people who don't support that. So if you hang around people who constantly say that's not possible, be realistic, that is going to zap your ambition no matter how much inner strength you have. Try to find peers and mentors or communities that encourage these audacious goals. And you want at least a few people in your circle who can respond to these crazy ideas with, that sounds amazing. How can you make it happen? And hold you accountable, rather than, I don't know. Positive energy and creative thinking in your environment will reinforce your own belief. And when you do face doubts, and you will, these are the folks that will remind you why you started and push you to keep going. Quick personal tip, if you don't have supporters in real life, consume content from big thinkers like podcasts, hello, books, biographies of dreamers, and, other communities like Reddit to keep you inspired. And last but certainly not least, stay humble and keep learning. Hold on a second. Humble, what are we talking about here? I've just spent this entire episode telling you to be delusional. Okay, here's the nuance. Believe in your ultimate success, but don't assume you already know everything. Delusional confidence should not mean delusional ignorance. Okay, here's what I mean by this. The best kind of self-belief is the one that drives you to learn, improve, and adapt all the time. So be open to feedback and new information. If an approach isn't working, tweak it. Being delulu doesn't mean you ignore all criticism or live in a fantasy world. It means you use your conviction as fuel while actively getting better. Think of it like this. Your destination, or success, or whatever you want that to be, is non-negotiable to your delusional mind. But you remain flexible on the route you take to get there. Keep educating yourself and sharpening your skills on that journey. That way, your delusion becomes more and more achievable. Guys, I'm gonna give it to you straight. The line between delusion and vision is results. That's it. And I said this at the very beginning, but I'm going to say it again. Every great accomplishment was once thought to be unrealistic. The people who achieve those accomplishments are the ones who believed in them blindly enough to put in the effort and persist until they made it real. What was so crazy before suddenly becomes genius after it works. So don't be afraid to be a little crazy before. That is the only way anything ever happens. If you believe with absolute conviction that you're meant to achieve something, you'll view setbacks as temporary, even as just signs to try harder. You'll keep knocking on doors even after dozens have slammed in your face. In other words, delusional hope breeds grit. I'll leave you with this final thought. Most people who accomplish great things later admit that at one point they had almost unreasonable persistence. They didn't just know how to quit. They refused to accept failure as final. This often comes from a deep internal belief that says, I am destined to make this work somehow. Good luck. See you next time. That's a wrap on this episode of Jeans with a Blazer. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, a mindset shift, or just the push you needed, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It helps more people find it, and it keeps these conversations going. And I love hearing from you. Follow at Jeans with a Blazer and tag me with your biggest takeaways, your latest wins, or just tell me what topics you want to hear about next. See you next time.